Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Thoughtful Intentions. I'm your host, Fiona Winch, and today I'm joined by David Gaines. Do you go by Dave more now or David?
It depends on how much I like you, to be honest. Fiona, I give you the Dave pass because we have a
Okay,
history. We know each other. We're friends. But when strangers call me Dave, I want to strangle them.
that's so funny. Okay, well,
Yeah.
I'll say David just so that if anyone reaches out to you
Right.
after,
Right.
they don't feel like
Yeah, they won't.
allowed to
Yeah,
say Dave.
absolutely.
I'm
Fiona,
so excited to do this.
me too. I'm glad we finally got to make it work.
I
Like,
know, and
because we reached out, what, like 2 years ago?
I think it was more like a year and some change.
Okay.
But yeah, it's been a long time coming, and I feel like honestly, um the anticipation, like I've worked myself up a little bit, and I like just my nerves have gotten a little bit higher the more the time has gone on,
Wow.
and now
Wow.
I have
Wow.
to step back and be like, okay, just chill.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
very
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
easy to talk to, like just relax.
Yeah, I'm mad regular. I'm sipping on some pink Moscato because I'm basic as fuck.
No,
And
and I'm envious because um well all day for some reason, not for
uh
some reason, I started rereading a bit because obviously I read the book last year when it first came out. And
Come on, my book.
yes, your book, Soft Boy.
Wow, thank you, Fiona.
Yes. But I've been thinking all day about um and not as a comment on you or necessarily the themes, but a little bit about the themes of the work. I've been thinking about the people who refuse to ask for help until they're in a place where they need to beg for it,
Mm, mm,
and like what an adjustment that must be to the more fragile of egos.
mm,
And I debated sharing with you that I wasn't feeling well because I didn't want it to come off as an excuse,
mm.
but I like an excuse to drop the ball or anything, but I wanted to keep it real. So I was like going through this internal monologue, like, do I tell him that I am not feeling super well? And I decided to tell you because I'm just glad that you're down for a little give and take. And I figured
For sure.
I might lead with some honesty there.
Well, thank you. Thank you for offering that to me and to your listeners.
Yeah.
That I think you're setting a standard because, you know,
Well, it's hard because, like, part of me wants to be like, oh, yeah, fake it till you make it. And the other part of me is like, I'm human. If I'm like a little low energy, I don't want David to think it's about him, or
yeah,
it's not a
yeah.
reflection of how excited I am to do this episode.
No, for sure. I think I honestly can't stand professionalism. Like I understand its function in society, but it's
Uh-huh.
like if you're not feeling well, you're not feeling well. You know, that's context that allows me as someone who's like engaging with you, just as a friend, as a person, even though this is like, we're talking about business and my career and like your career
Yeah.
and everything. Um, we're still people. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? At the end of the
Yeah.
day, and the more that we allow people to see our full humanity and understand our full experience, the more like intimate and like the better we can hold each other in like these moments. So like
Yeah.
I appreciate you being transparent, and I hope you had a really good time last night.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't have Moscato. I have Gatorade, and it just is what it is. We keep on going. Before we get into the nitty gritty, I know that you wanted to read, or I asked you to read something.
Yeah.
Not you asked. Is that something you want to do now?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do
All
it
right, let's do
now.
it. Give them a little
So
sneak
folks
peek.
hear the work. You can make
Yeah.
your own opinion, dear listener. Um, and yeah. So I guess I'll start with this poem.
Okay.
It's called A Poem for My Ex. Fuck you. Thank you. I'll do a real one.
I was like,
That
wait a second.
that
I don't
poem's not
remember
in the
this
book.
one.
That poem's not in the book.
I was like, this doesn't sound familiar.
Yeah, I wanted to put that poem. That's just like a
That's so
bit I
funny.
do. I like to fuck around.
Yeah.
But I actually want to put that in my next book because I put that in softball and my homies are like, yo, this is not this has
Like,
nothing to
leave me
do
alone.
like with anything else in the book. It's just one of my favorite poems because
That's hilarious.
here's the real poem.
Okay.
Um, and this poem is the titular poem of the book. It's called Soft Boy. Soft boy knows he's soft, but doesn't want you to think he's soft. Soft boy, not like the other boys. Soft boy has feelings and no idea what to do with them. Soft boy loves his mama. Soft boy sensitive, soft boy cries, soft boy wears sweaters and cuffs his jeans, soft boy listens to Fleetwood Mac, soft boy switches the Biggie around his niggas, soft boy is terrible at sports and being aggressive in general, soft boy claims he ain't gay, but feels threatened around men more attractive than him, soft boy cries, soft boy reads books, soft boy woke, soft boy feminist, soft boy says free the nipples so he can get a better view, soft boy paints a picture of patriarchy, always landscape, never self-portrait. Soft boy wears a dress, soft boy reinventing masculinity, or so soft boy says. Soft boy wolf in femme clothing, soft boy evolved fuck boy, soft boy cries, soft boy likes your posts, soft boy slides in your DMs respectfully. Soft boy doesn't fuck. Soft boy makes love. Soft boy loves to cuddle. Soft boy little spoon. Soft boy doesn't believe in labels. Soft boy ghosts you. Soft boy sorry. Soft boy has been going through it. Soft boy makes you feel guilty. Soft boy cries. Soft boy victim. Soft boy cries. Soft boy cries. Soft boy cries. Soft boy working on himself. Soft boy trying his best. Soft boy thinks his efforts enough. Soft boy thinks his softness enough. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I want to,
Thanks for listening.
in case there's any visual aspect to this, I'm holding up the book right now. Oh, you see all my sticky
Wow.
notes too.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
um,
That's
it's so
incredible.
good to hear out loud. And I know that you were a little bit nervous about the potency of your performance
Mm,
translating
mm,
on the page.
mm, mm.
How did you feel about that after writing it? Because I felt like I read it in your voice.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. You're talking about the book in totality, right?
Yeah.
It's really hard to say because the first time you heard me was, back in the
I
Dizzy.
know. Yeah.
Um, and I guess for context, like Fiona and I met at college. We both
Yes.
attended the Pennsylvania State University. And yeah, so I guess that may lend to why you know what I sound like, and
Totally.
so
Yeah.
there's just a different,
Mm,
I'm always thinking about the people who are hearing me for the first time and who don't
mm,
really have that context. And that's where the nerves came in because it's like I am confident and and maybe it's arrogance, but like if I can like perform it, I think I can like get someone's attention
mm.
because I got into poetry um through slam, which a lot of people think slam poetry is like all of performance poetry. No, like slam poetry is a very specific art form where it's a competition, it's a sport. But I got into poetry through slam, through performing. And so performance has always been integral to my work. And in fact, if I'm being honest, if I'm being really, really
Yeah.
honest, I think my performance for a long time was much better than my writing,
Mm,
and that my performance carried my writing in a way that translating to the page, it was like, I don't know how this is gonna go. And so I really had to read a lot. I really had to really study, writers and writers that I like. Um, and so I don't know. I
well,
mean, you be the judge. I really don't
yeah.
know if I accomplished my goal
Oh
of
my
being
God.
as potent on the page or not, but I'm
I
getting
really
better.
think you
I know
did.
that much.
I
Thank
really
you,
think you did.
Fiona.
And I like, just as a writer myself too, I
Mm,
loved
mm,
like just seeing how you use different devices, like
mm.
blacking out the name,
Yes.
or like,
Yeah.
different indents,
Mm,
or there's one
mm,
I
mm.
just had where it was like the word fell literally falls
Yeah.
down the
Yeah.
page.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know if you would like write like that when you're just going to perform something, or
Mm,
whether
mm.
um you use that to help translate the performance aspect of it. But that really all of that really resonated for me.
I
Especially
appreciate
even
that.
like the beginning where you have this affirmation slip, the
Mm,
permission slip to go on this journey. I
mm.
was like, wow, okay, I'm present, like I'm here.
Yeah,
Like that
yeah,
really set the tone for me when I first read it. I remember opening it up even a year ago and being like, okay, okay,
yeah.
I'm buckled up.
Yeah,
I'm ready.
yeah, hell yeah, yeah. That I mean, that was absolutely the intention, and I appreciate the way that you have engaged with the work, and also for sharing that with me. I feel like I can't speak to like all other poets, but at least me and like maybe a few other ones I spoke to, like people will normally just say, "I loved your book," or maybe I
Mhm,
love the specific poem, or maybe they may get a little more specific, but like actually hearing what it is, like the effect that the work has on you specifically is very helpful. So first, just thank you for that. Uh, it's experimental. Like again, like having a book out is something that I didn't think I was capable of in like 2017, which was when I graduated. And so just thinking back to that time and really stressing out, trying to figure out what to do, and seeing that product, I'm so proud of it. And you're right, like there's a lot of like I really had to pay attention to like the minutia of the reading experience, and like things like a title, the way a
mhm,
title frames a piece, or yeah, like the difference between writing fell and then
mhm,
writing fall as the letters are falling on the page, and what
mhm.
that does in the imagination of the reader. If someone who again has never heard my voice, they don't know what I sound like, they don't
Right.
know what color my skin is, they're just like, here's this book that I found. So yeah, I could not do that alone. That was definitely like the other poets involved, who read the work, and who have their own books, their own manuscripts, but also have edited other people's work. There was a lot of like them being honest with me and be like, look, bro, like, you know, I love the writing, the writing's great,
Mhm,
but you should, or maybe you should consider like playing with the form, and
mhm.
that's what we're really talking about is form. And I've had like a very tense relationship with form, when it comes to my writing, because I usually write in free verse. So in that book, I was trying to like really experiment with form, and in my next one, like I'm going to take that even further and really get weird. Like I want to get so
Like,
abstract.
do you tend to subscribe to a certain form and like are breaking away from that, or you
Mm.
just want to make sure that it's consistent enough as you explore different forms? Like, what's the tension?
The tension is, so those are two different questions. One,
Okay.
so the tension is from academia, I think.
Okay. Got it.
There is a way in which academia in America interacts with poetry,
Mhm,
that puts a lot of emphasis on not just form, but a specific kind of form, those sort of like
mhm.
canonized forms that are usually created by, dead white men.
Right.
Um, but or have been co-opted by
Mhm.
like white people, even if like, because a lot of forms are rooted in like Asian cultures, or like all types of cultures outside of this country. But once it gets here, it's like like the haiku, it's like,
Right.
you know how many people really know where that comes from and what it was before it became like this sort of micro this way to like consume poetry in like micro ways. So yeah, there's a lot of like hierarchy in academia. There's a lot of like, especially coming from slam poetry and performance poetry, like academia doesn't like slam poets. In fact, at Penn State, because I was a
Mhm.
president of the writing organization there, which is it's called Penn State Words. It's still running, which is awesome.
Amazing.
And Penn State actually currently holds the national championship for collegiate poetry slam.
Really?
Yeah, they currently do,
Wow.
because the last one was I think in 2018, and that's when they won. So,
Hey. That's awesome.
we take those, and shout out to the team who won that. They're phenomenal. So academia, while I was at Penn State, we would throw these poetry slams and 400 people would come. And then the English department, or like the literature department, would bring in like the poet laureate of the US,
Mhm.
um, and like 20 people would come, or like 30 people would come, right? And so
Right.
there was a lot of jealousy, I think, and honestly, like I think a lot of racism, for real, being like, oh, it's your poetry isn't, it isn't, it
Correct.
isn't, yeah, it isn't proper
Right.
because it's not said in this way, or your performance is really good and it's
Mhm.
all your performance, and it just gets really weird in academia. So that's where the tenseness comes from. It's from me trying to stay organic and true to my heritage and like in my culture, and how just like Black people, we are very much about call and response. And like, I grew up in church, you know what I mean? So performance is again, it's a part of the work for me.
Right.
So there's that's where the tenseness comes from. And then the first part of your question, um, I honestly I don't think about it like that. Like, I don't think like, I need to write in these forms today. I need to practice like this particular form. I honestly like let the poem be whatever the fuck it wants to be. I'm really like just trying to get out of the poem's way. And sometimes if I
Mm.
can like identify, okay, this particular form would really aid this poem in this way, or this particular form might help the poem reach its full potential. That's really my job. Um, and not to sound too
Yeah.
artsy fartsy, like, oh, the poems
No.
just move through me, but it's like, literally, like
Yeah.
I am not trying to make this poem anything, which is why I don't like force poems into form. It's like
Mm.
if I write something and I think a form could help it be better, or be received better, or just look better, I'm absolutely going to do that because that's my job as a poet. Yeah.
Well, I think you're setting such a great example for that because so many people, um, even myself at times, you think that you can't write
Mm,
because
mm,
you're not going to maybe uh, write what this author wrote or
mhm,
in
mhm,
the way that you think you should,
mhm,
even though there's really no should, because
mhm.
it's just a form of self-expression that's
Absolutely.
coming from you.
Absolutely.
And so I feel like I started writing more when I got rid of that notion that there is a right or wrong. And
Yeah.
um because it can just like really keep you down, like and prevent
Absolutely.
you from actually putting words on a page, just this concept that you won't do it correctly.
Art is all about collaboration for me, at least in my approach for to it. I'm very introverted, so like, I don't
Are
really
you
do
really?
much. Absolutely, absolutely, 100%. And I think people don't know that about me because
Yeah.
I'm a good performer, right? I've learned behaviors in terms of like socialization, but like,
Hmm.
Fiona, I was homeschooled like for like
Were
five
you
something
really?
years. Yeah. Like during
Like
like
high
very
school? Or
younger, like
really?
like elementary school.
Hmm.
Um, and I had been to like I think like private schools and stuff before then, because again, like my parents were very religious and also very overprotective and strict. And so they like pulled us out of school just to have more control over our education, whatever the
Hmm.
fuck that meant. And that
Yeah.
just meant us going to uh, a virtual charter school.
Mm.
And so I've spent a lot of time alone. I've had to create my own fun. And I would like
Mm.
spend time with like the neighborhood kids, and we played basketball or king ball, or like, I tried to like double dutch with my sister, and stuff like that. But for the most part, I spent a lot of my childhood um, with
That's so
myself on
interesting.
the computer.
So where did
Yeah.
you find performance? Like how did you
I mean,
how did that come into play?
Fiona, like I grew up in church. Like
Mm.
that's all performance. And okay, so when I say I grew up in church, right, I need to learn how to be more specific, because a lot of people grew up in church and everyone can just say that and everyone's like, oh yeah, we're all having the same
Yeah,
experience.
right.
No, my church was my family's business.
Okay.
Imagine like The Sopranos, but like with church, and I'm not even exaggerating. That
Okay.
is the level of like
Damn it.
the combination of like capitalism with like this with church and like this like spiritual communal experience.
Mhm.
And so I'm a third, we say like third generation. Like my grandfather founded this church. It was called Consolation Baptist Church on 25th and Wharton. It was in South Philly, which is like a second home to me because so much
Mhm.
of my family and friends from childhood still live there. Um, and then my dad took it over. And then like I was supposed to take it over by the time I was like 16 or something like that, because that's what my dad did.
Uh-huh.
And, clearly that didn't work out, right?
But
But
you thought you were going to.
I thought I was
That
going
was
to,
the
and
plan.
I didn't just thought I was going to. I thought I wanted to
Mm.
until I was about 13, and it started being this looming thing over me, and I realized like I don't want to do this. Like I want to do this to please my father, but I don't want to be miserable like him because my dad is miserable. And because he himself like sacrificed his, and I wrote this in the book, he sacrificed his own dreams and desires to take over the church and be this son that he thought his dad wanted him to be. And so it's not like I actively made the choice not to be a preacher. The church, like my dad kind of did some like real foul shit, and we had to like leave. We
Really?
actually moved. Yeah, we moved to Texas for a year when I was 12.
Oh, shit.
Yeah,
Wow.
we moved to Texas during like it was 2008. It was the year Obama was elected. It was the year Hurricane Ike hit Texas.
Uh-huh.
It was the year it snowed in Texas for like the first time in like 20 years. So I think we
Wow.
brought some like real chaotic like energy. But yeah, I bring all that up to say that church, to me, in my opinion, is a show. The way that I prepare for a poetry set is the same way I remember my dad preparing his sermons on Sunday.
Mm.
Um, you know, if you've been to church, especially a Baptist church like I grew up in, you're very aware of the theatrics involved. And everyone already knows that the best part of church is the music, right?
Mhm.
Like that's undebatable. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's very performative in both its structure, but also in what it demands of its participants. One thing I really resented about church was that all the like the I wasn't allowed to wear hats. You know, I would want to wear like my fitteds, or I think fitteds
Mhm.
were in style back then. Like I wanted to wear fitteds, and you know, like the church elders would take it off, even though they're wearing these big ass like
Yeah.
flying saucer ass hats, right? It's like I'm my fitted is betraying that culture. So their church hat is fine, but for some reason my cap is interfering with me and God
Mm.
somehow. So that's just what I mean in terms of it's being performative, but it's also enforced. You know, like it's
Right.
something that is policed. And so I feel like I've been in show business my whole life. Like what I'm doing now is just yeah, like the Bible isn't my reference point, and it's just self-expression. Um, but I take it that seriously. You know, I think about the
Yeah.
things I say on these stages as if, you know, it did come from God because in my opinion, like I'm trying to write from a place that is like spiritual and is connected to like the part of me that is in everyone else, if that makes sense. Like,
I was thinking earlier about like I genuinely don't think that well, okay. I do care about what people think of me,
mm,
and not necessarily from a place of insecurity anymore, but
mm,
just I've um come to be more aware of the power that my words and actions hold, and the way that
yeah,
I treat other people and
yeah,
present myself has an effect on others. So I do get nervous about like how is this being perceived and portrayed.
absolutely.
Um and I already forget why that came up for me right now because I
No,
got
no, I mean,
distracted
because we
by
were talking
something.
about performance and
Yeah,
performativity. And I mean, you literally run a podcast, and that's
I
like
know.
talking about a platform for words and the power of words. People listen to you probably while they're driving, while they're like going about
Yeah.
their life. And, you know, there's a level of responsibility with that. I
Yeah,
mean,
I'm
you know,
acutely aware of that. Just like
yeah,
I
I
don't
can
really
tell.
know.
I can tell. You're very careful. Like, and I feel you because like I'm the same way. But like, you got to be careful what you say, and you got
It's
to
just hard because
be
like I want to
mindful.
be both transparent and like as grounded and real as possible, but
Yeah.
also just like cognizant of how I
Yeah.
impact others, and how
Absolutely.
my choices
Absolutely.
impact others. So like it's kind of weird. I'm kind of surprised by this like notion that some people aren't concerned with how the world sees them, and I'm a little envious,
Bullshit. Bullshit. I don't believe them. I don't
You
believe
know?
people who say that. I don't believe you at all. And if you don't care at all what people say, that's even a little like that's a red flag for me,
Yeah.
actually, because I feel like it's very, you don't have to like let other people's opinions dictate what you do or say or anything like that. But you're telling me that animalistic impulse in human beings for community, like that is hardwired into our brains. You just don't feel that, like you're evolved
I
beyond the
know.
need to engage with people, and in order to deal with people you have to do exactly what we're saying, and what we're describing isn't being fake, it's not being
Yeah.
dishonest, but it's being mindful,
So
you
do
know.
you feel though that like your performance self and your introverted self, like do they feel like different people?
Mm, that's a good ass question, Fiona. Do they feel like different people? No. I recognize that they are,
Mm-hmm.
and that there's things that I do when I'm performing that are not true to who I really am. Because, when I'm performing, I understand that it's about being interesting. That's the whole
Yeah.
point of performing. It's to like, so people don't fucking, know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
you want people to stay awake and to be listening to
Yeah.
what you're saying. And so, um, yeah, there is a bit of like, um, dishonesty is a word, and being disingenuous isn't even the word. Those are like very negative sounding words. I think the word I'm looking for is like being entertaining. Like I want to be entertaining, and I recognize that's not true for every poet or every artist. But yeah, I like making people laugh. I like keeping people's attention, and in order to do that, I have to be at least an exaggerated version of myself, because honestly, like we're all really boring. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't care how interesting you think you are, you're not that interesting, my
Mm-hmm.
dude. But to answer your question, I think that my performance self is just like my regular self, but like times
Like
100.
amplified.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that way it's like
Okay.
my foundation is still me. So that's how I sleep at night.
Yeah.
I'm not laying in my bed like, oh, I'm a fraud. My career is based on a
Right.
lie. It's like, no, like I stand on myself. And therefore, if anyone were to critique me in my show or in my performance, they would still be critiquing me. So I'd still listen.
Mm.
I still like receive what they have to say in their input. But
That's intimidating
yeah.
because, one of the things I found liberating about performance is that I didn't have to be myself.
Mm,
Like
that's one
I
way to do
got
it.
to be
Yep.
someone else
Yep.
in character.
Yep.
Um, and so if someone critiqued it, like, sure, it's me on the stage, but it's not my personality.
Literally,
You
no,
know what I
literally.
mean? Like,
And I can do that with acting. Like
yeah,
acting allows me to do that and also allows you to do that.
yeah.
But when you're
But that's
building,
intimidating when it's yourself
it's
and it's your work
absolutely,
and it's your thoughts and your
absolutely,
feelings and your experiences
absolutely,
just on the stage.
absolutely.
Like,
You're so right.
that's
Not
intimidating.
everyone's built for it, to be honest. It is like it takes a level of toughness, I think. But that's vulnerability in a nutshell, right?
In terms of vulnerability,
Yeah.
your work often observes this struggle, and please correct me if I'm wrong or misrepresenting this, but reading it to me felt like there was like a comment on a struggle to fit in and a struggle to be vulnerable, and yet sharing these stories and these experiences is like a courageous act in itself. And
Mm.
I just wonder if that feels like vulnerability to you or if you think of vulnerability differently.
Um, I 100% agree that it is a courageous act, because I'm a nervous wreck. Like I just told you that I'm introverted and I'm shy, and
Yeah.
and I'm anxious. Anxiety like runs in my family. So I do have to overcome a lot to just get on the stage. And I'll tell you this because we can edit this shit out if we wanted
Yeah.
to.
Mhm.
Literally before every performance, I have to poop. Like I literally take a shit because the nerve, I get those butterflies.
Yeah, of
Same
course.
thing with like when I'm about to ride a roller coaster, actually. I have to take a shit as well because to me, in my mind, I'm like, oh, this is like a regular thing. But in my body, it's like we are going to die. Like we are, I'm in my fight or flight mode when I'm about to perform. So it takes courage to step on the stage and just say anything, let alone tell your own story
Mhm.
to a group of strangers, usually. Um, I don't think that is always a vulnerable experience for me. Um, this is something I've been really wrestling with lately, actually, because, and I'll ask you this earnestly, like, is it vulnerability if you're still in control?
That's a good question because it being a book that, like, I know that you're editing and presenting, like, aware of the packaging.
Mhm.
um I can see why that would feel a little more polished than most vulnerable moments appear to be. But I don't know, I think there's still um something to be said about the content being vulnerable, and like you are
Mm, mm,
opening yourself to people you don't even know, people that have this now and are reading it. And um I think yes. I think
word. Ah.
yes.
Yeah, I mean,
But I can
right, there's no
see
right or wrong
why.
answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been asking that question to a lot of my friends just because I'm genuinely trying to find out my own answer. Because yes, while like most people who read my book are going to call it vulnerable because yeah, I'm writing about shit that most people would never share,
Hmm.
publicly, let alone publish it in like a text that'll outlive you, you know.
Right.
So yeah, like I get that. And at the same time, it's like to me, vulnerability is about control and that being vulnerable is an act and it is an ongoing act, in my opinion. It's something that like happens internally. It's not about what you say or what you're talking about. Because again, in church, you know how many times I watch my father while he's preaching fake cry, you know?
Really.
Yeah, of course, because you got to get you're trying to get the tithe and offering. So you're trying to pay your bills that
Oh
month.
god.
And so you're gonna let tears flow. And so he did. And when I tell you I've never seen that man cry at home,
Mm.
just us, no crowd, no audience, just us. Nope. And so that's what I mean by vulnerability
You
is like,
cry?
do I cry?
Yeah.
Oh, all the fucking time. Are you kidding me? Oh, bro, I was crying just
Soft
before.
boy
No,
cries.
no, no, no. No, yeah. I mean, I'm a cancer, so
Oh, okay.
I cry very easily. In fact, earlier it looked like you were almost about to cry, and I almost
Oh
crying.
no. Oh
I was
no.
like, yeah. So I
I
absolutely
actually
cried.
I do that
Uh,
too, especially in
yeah.
movies. If like
Oh my
I
god.
cry at everything in
Oh
movies.
my god.
Everything.
And I look like such a. I know simp is the wrong word. I just look like such a loser crying
No.
at like Toy Story 3. You know what I'm saying? Like,
No.
you know, but that scene was really sad with them in the fucking in the furnace or the incinerator, and they're all holding hands, bro. Like
There's a lot to cry over once you put yourself in someone else's shoes. Like
literally,
it's hard
like,
not to.
but being vulnerable, I think happens internally, and
Mm,
I don't think people get to decide who is being vulnerable and who's not being vulnerable. It's more like you decide whether in that moment you're giving up your power, like you're
mm,
allowing others to to affect you in a negative way, like
Mm,
potentially, like I think that's vulnerability. I've heard it described as, and I don't necessarily agree with this, so
okay.
take it with a grain of salt, but I've heard it described as like giving someone else a gun to point at you and then asking them like not to pull the trigger, essentially.
Hmm.
And if we use that as a framework for vulnerability, even though it's like kind of violent and I don't like that metaphor, but how many times have you actually given someone that level of, access to you?
Right.
And if you really think about it like that, that's when the window of like what is considered vulnerable, I think, starts to shrink a bit. So,
You wrote, and I'm pulling this from your Instagram, a
okay.
caption. You wrote, Soft Boy takes an intimate look at the absurdities of toxic masculinity and attempts to illustrate the need to abandon patriarchy and misogyny as urgent, essential to Black liberation, and ultimately in everybody's best interest.
Yeah.
Humorous and introspective, Soft Boy is the echoing cry of a Black man desperately searching for authenticity in a world that champions performance. And to hone in on the comment of patriarchy and misogyny, um, you write a lot about the binary expectations for manhood and womanhood and what it means to fit into those gender roles,
Yeah.
especially within the Black community.
Mm.
And I'm just wondering how your understanding of those constructs has changed as you've grown and healed from those expectations. Like, do you still think? I guess I'm asking a lot right now, but do you also still think of that expansion and evolution of thinking as a means for liberation?
100%. Um, I have grown from that book. In fact, I feel as though I'm a completely different person
I
than.
know you told me that that the person who wrote this is like essentially gone, and I'm
Yeah,
so
yeah,
curious
yeah,
to
yeah,
hear more
yeah.
about that.
That nigga's dead, but I'm still that person, and there are aspects of that person because that person was still me. I think I was just performing a lot,
Mm,
and performance is great when when in its context, right? Like performing on stage is great, but you shouldn't be. There we go. Yeah,
yeah.
literally, like every
Every
man.
man I know is a performer, more display than practice, or
Yeah,
practicing some display learned from other men.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I still believe absolutely that um, until every person in the world is free, and I mean that, the most marginalized person in the world, and as long as they're still in chains and still oppressed, then we all can't be free. You can't say that you're for Black liberation, or you know you're for, even like, you're communist and you're about the working class and like all that. You can't do that and then exclude like trans folk. Do you know what I
Right.
mean? Like you can't do that and exclude like queer folk, or asexual folk. Like, but those same people in the same breath will say that they're about Black freedom and that they want like reparations, and it's like, y'all are cops, bro. Like y'all are the same. Like y'all are mimicking the same oppressive behavior for a myriad of reasons, right? Like, again, like I'm not, I don't vilify anyone anymore. Like that was
Mm,
part of the me that died. Like I
mm,
refuse to not hold people's fullness in in their humanity, especially POC and Black people, right? Like we need that. So I'm not trying to like vilify anyone. I'm just trying to say that like there are some people in this world that internalize their oppressor's voice and behaviors and mannerisms,
mm,
and that ultimately there are people who care more about clinging to power, and wanting to have power over certain individuals or not, that they'll completely abandon any sort of rationale that tells them that the way that they're behaving is also problematic and also
Mhm.
damaging and also oppressive and also toxic. Anyway, yes, I absolutely still believe that. And so that is intrinsic to my artistic process.
Mhm.
Just this idea that like cis hetero patriarchy, um, like a cap and capitalism, like all that shit. I don't care. I don't care what it's done for you. I don't care what your position is in it. As long as you have investments in that system, someone is getting fucked. And it may not be you, and you may be more comfortable with that certain group getting fucked. But I'm telling you, the more you feed into that, the more that group is going to fuck you. And so it's like really divesting from all those systems is what Softboy was trying to get to. And I didn't do it in a great way, if I'm being honest. Like,
You don't think
I,
so?
no, I don't. And you know, feel free to disagree because ultimately, like the book is belongs to the people now. Like
Mm.
I just put it out there, so I don't have like the end all be all of what it means or what it.
What makes you think that in your mind it doesn't though?
I think Soft Boy, as well written as it is, and as proud of it as I am. I mean, you can see my little like
Yeah.
my mom. My mom got me this statue.
That is so
Um,
cute.
yeah,
Oh
it's
my
like
gosh.
Kanye West on it or whatever. I love her. She's very supportive. Um, as proud of it as I am, right? The book feels, I think I just wanted to like shake things up,
Mm.
right? Like I wanted to like press the buttons, you know, I wanted to light the fire. Um, but it was my cousin actually who told me recently, like his issue with like people like that who just like to start fires is that like they're usually not equipped with dealing with them. You know, they like to
The
start
aftermath.
fires and then just like watch it burn. Or maybe they just start fire and then like leave. But like it takes a different level of maturity, or at the very least, like responsibility to be like, hey, if I start a fire, it's because I know a better way. And it's because like I have tools to deal with the fallout of that fire and to deal with the after effects of that fire. And that's not to say there isn't space for people to just start fires. Like that's completely okay. And like, you know, sometimes we need people who are just going to light the match and you know, and do that. But everyone can't be that. Everyone can't be a fire starter. Some people have to know how to build, you
But
know,
that's
and
like that's just a lot to ask, I think, for someone to have the solution right away. You
mm,
know, like if you're aware that this is a fire and you don't have the wood to build something right afterwards,
yeah,
but you're still working on finding that wood and like that's part of your process, it's not going to happen the month after you release the book. You know, it might
absolutely,
happen like down the
absolutely,
line. So I just feel
absolutely.
like that's like a huge expectation to um and I understand what you mean about some people do just light fires and leave it
Mhm,
burning. But I
mhm,
think
mhm.
just specifically in this instance,
Yeah,
I would never read this as, and because I know you and your work, like someone who's starting a fire without
yeah.
any intention of following through.
So what I just said only applies to certain things I've talked about,
Okay.
in the book, not
Okay.
the
Okay.
book
Okay.
as a whole. Because when it
Okay.
comes to like the masculinity stuff, I do think there are like solid, at least in terms of where I'm at with my processing of it within the book, like,
Mhm.
you know, I feel comfortable in that there are tools to help people actually deal with their,
Yes.
you know,
I
issues.
agree. Yeah.
And so that part's solid, but it's like some of the other stuff where I'm like, I just did that to like piss people off. And honestly, like, I'm gonna be honest, like, I don't feel as though I have really fully allowed myself to understand the power of words. And I know we were just talking about that
Yeah.
earlier. But like, you know, I'm a writer. I've been performing poetry for it'll be 11 years this year. And like when I tell you that I'm still learning about the impact of language and just the way that
I want to read you
literally
something.
Please do.
Continue
No, yeah,
telling me.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
listening,
It's
but I
just
want to grasp.
it's that whole thing of like once you say something, you can't take it back. You know, and so you just for myself, let me stop saying you, like I am learning now in this season of my life that if you say it, you need to be able to stand on it. You know, you need to be able to like die on that hill. Otherwise, shut the fuck up. You know, really, like otherwise you're just talking. And I'm tired of
Yeah.
just talking now. Like now I'm like, I want to talk about some real shit, some shit that I'm really going through and stuff that like I'm really dealing with and that like I have the tools to deal with and that I want to share the tools that I'm finding to deal with. Cause yeah, I think you're right. And when you say like you can't find the answers alone. And my poetry has never been about finding answers. It's all been about asking questions
Right.
and then finding the answers with my listeners, with people who are following me. Like I want to go on this journey with y'all to find the answers to these questions that are in my mind. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a lot. It's
No,
a lot.
I totally understand what you mean. A friend of mine, and I thought she had written it down, but I think she just said it verbally.
Mm,
We were playing that game, We're Not Really Strangers, and we were at the beach.
mm.
And I forget what the question was, but
What's that
she
game? I've never heard of that game
it's just
before.
a card game and it's like has just um questions. Some like the first round, I think you ask other people the questions.
Okay.
And then the second round, you ask yourself the question and have to answer it verbally. And then there's like a reflection round kind of thing. It's just to like inspire more like deeper conversation. But she told me, that she didn't think I understood the my particular impact on others and just how
Mm,
like
mm,
my the way I exist and interact with people like for for good reasons and probably some for bad reasons, but just
mm,
overall my impact. And I like kind of had to sit there and be like, oh yeah, I mean, I guess like as a kid, I was very quiet and very shy. And I've been in situations where I think that I can kind of get away with being a little invisible and just
mm.
realizing that I'm never going to be invisible. And like,
Yeah,
you know, I wherever I go, I'm going to have an impact on someone. And
absolutely.
that's true for all of us.
Absolutely.
And really understanding that because
Mhm.
it makes difference.
100%. I mean, and I think in terms of the invisibility thing, I mean, like that in America, that is a white privilege, and not to like white
Yeah.
privilege,
No,
but
it
like
is.
it's just like the ability to fade in the background,
Mhm.
and then you compound that with like patriarchy, right, which is already ready to silence you and already doesn't want to hear from you in the first place. It's like there are real things that are incentivizing you to be quiet, right, and to shrink.
Mhm.
And that it takes like a level of maturity and self-awareness to be like, I'm a human being, like I'm a person. I'm like a
Yeah.
real living, breathing person with thoughts and opinions and flaws and strengths and things I want to do better at, things I'm great at already. Like you have that. We all have that. But these like there's something about the country we live in that like tries to treat people like homogenize people and they try to like make you feel like you're not the shit,
Yeah.
but you are. And I'm glad that you were able to receive that from your friend because when I tell you like not everyone can hear stuff like that about themselves and still
Yeah.
be like connected
Well,
with
I
a
mean, it
person.
was like, you know, she's just such okay, this actually makes me want to ask you something else because she's the kind of
Okay.
person that will call it like it is.
Yeah.
And I know that about her and I know that it's never ill intended. She's just
Mm,
like
mm,
observant and will find the means to express her observations
yeah.
in a way that I can receive it because
Mm,
I know that about her.
yeah.
And I know that part of your job as a poet is to observe the world and like you've said in the past, like hold a mirror up to it.
Yeah.
And I just wonder like if that's gotten you in trouble ever.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
yeah, even in the book, like my family was pissed.
Were they?
Yeah.
I was
Uh,
gonna ask because I know that I think I know that you're close with your mom, and just you mentioned her a lot in her influence.
my mom is really chill about it. Like
That's cool.
I read her the stuff that I thought she would be most upset about, if anything. But my mom's been with me through this whole journey. Like, my mom came the first time I performed at Thon at Penn State, actually. Like,
Really?
drove up. Yeah, that was my first time. Like, my family came to like
That's so
see
cool.
me perform. And my dad was still in my life at the time, and he was there and actually performed the Angel poem for the first time. Like the baby version of it. It was like
Hmm.
much worse back then. But yeah, like my mom was chilling, and my mom's side of the family honestly was chilling too, because they're religious, but like they're like realistically religious,
Okay.
like still like drink and smoke and like, live their lives. Like they still have a
Like
bit of like,
spiritual, but
yeah, but like still rooted in the earth, and they're
yeah,
like still human beings. But my dad's side of the family, they like to act like they're above like reproach.
it's like a
Um,
holier than thou kind of.
it's a holier than thou thing, and it's also like, hmm, the way I've heard it described is like so heavenly minded that you're no earthly good. And I think that's a good way of framing, because it's like, yeah,
Mm.
like,
Oh,
you're so caught up in what the Bible says you need to be, and like getting into heaven and like saving, converting people or whatever the hell. But like there's real things happening on earth. Like people are really dying and don't have access to things and starving and homeless. Um, but generally, like, they're not too worried about that. Generally speaking, I know there are like some good Christians out there who are doing like good work for their communities, but it ain't most of them, not in America. So, um, yeah, they were pissed.
that would really like fuck with my like
Oh,
self-doubt a little bit too.
oh yeah. I mean, honestly, it probably contributes to my anxiety and
Yeah.
the other mental illnesses I have going on. But like, will they claim that? No, they'll just be like, oh, you're a great performer because you came from church, or you're a great rider because your daddy was a rider, and da, 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 da. They want to take all the good parts, but they don't want
Mm,
to acknowledge like the harm and like
yeah.
the issue. So I've kind of taken it upon myself, not for any other reason than for the fact that it seems to be happening organically already, to really start those conversations. And again, like I don't have the answers, and I'm not pretending any longer like I have the answers. I'm just one person, but I will at least start that conversation, or I will at least spark that person's
Mm,
mind who maybe
yeah.
one day will find the answer. Like I do want to be a part of that experience. So I think it's like Tupac said. He said, "I might not change the world, but I guarantee I'm a spark the mind of the person who will." And
Yeah.
I feel the same way.
I mean, that's a massive load to bear. Does it feel like a choice?
Does it feel like a choice? It feels like one, yeah, in the sense that I know I could not do it. You know, bro. Like who knows? I might wake up tomorrow feeling completely different. Like I'm allowing myself to change and grow in whatever direction I want to. So who knows? I might come out tomorrow as like the most toxic ass person. I'm like, fuck everybody and da 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 da, and I'll get canceled and everything, and and my life will keep moving on. But the person I am right now is very okay and comfortable um with taking on that responsibility, because I genuinely feel like sometimes when God, and I say God, I do not mean the Christian God. I don't mean Yahweh. I don't mean um any God tied to any religion. I just mean like the universal spirit or energy that like ties us all together. And I know that sounds really airy and um, but I do believe that sometimes when God makes you aware of a need, and and puts a need on the center of your consciousness, that maybe you're supposed to be a part of addressing it.
Have you ever read Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert?
No, I haven't.
I I absolutely adore that book. It's been a few years since I read it the first time, but she talks about ideas as alive and how
Mm,
like
mm.
this idea is going to find a home. And if it
Yeah.
comes to you and it wants to be there and you cultivate it, like it's yours, but it's alive. And it might, if you don't address it, it might move to a different home because
Absolutely.
it needs to be realized.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there, I mean, you know, as a creative, and I'm sure anyone listening to this who is like an artist and makes shit can
Mhm.
understand, like, when you see another person make something or do something that you thought of like way before,
Yeah.
and you just didn't either think it would be good or you just whatever reason didn't do it, it sucks.
Yeah. You're like,
It,
damn it.
yeah,
Yeah.
um, in the sense that like, and good for them because they did it,
Yeah.
and they made it and they put it
Right.
into the world.
No,
Um,
you're just mad at yourself.
exactly, because it's
Yeah.
like, damn, like, ideas are gifts,
Mhm.
and you're absolutely right that if it comes to you, that means you should do something with it. And it doesn't always have to be this big deal. Like I used to think every line that came to my head needed to be a poem. And it's like, no, maybe it's a tweet. Maybe it's
Mm,
a line in a rap. Maybe
yeah.
it's, a line in a play or something like that. Like there's so much potential. Like we all have so much potential, especially creatives and people who like spend their time exploring themselves and like all that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've talked about how you've evolved since and grown and healed
Yeah.
since this past year of writing this book. And I know that you took quite a bit of time away from social media.
Yeah.
What was that like? What was that choice like? What was the actual experience itself like? Just I'm fascinated.
Yeah. I took a break from social media from about February, March or so of 2021 to about February or March or so of 2022. Um, why I did that was because one, I don't enjoy social media at all. I understand its function and I admire people who are good at it. I really do. And like more power to y'all. Y'all are so
Mhm.
cool. Um, but again, like I'm shy, yo, and I have performance issues in terms of like my image. And so those things are just, I view social media as like one giant ass ongoing 24/7 party, right? Where there's always something going on and there's always something to focus on.
Mm,
And you can come and go and exit the party as you please, but when you do exit the party, everyone else is going to be talking about the party. And it's like you're missing out on the party, right?
yeah.
Um, to be honest, for majority of my life, and I'm different now, but like for majority of my life, I hated parties because I have social anxiety, right? And so it's like being in this public space where I'm hyper cognizant of my appearance, how I'm presenting, um, and I'm cognizant of how I'm presenting doesn't reflect the person I feel like on the inside. Um, it's just it's unsustainable. It's an unsustainable way of using those platforms. And so that came to a head last year, and it just happened to like coincide with like a terrible breakup that I was going through, and I was like, you know what, I'm done with this, and I don't care about the impact it has on my brand. I don't care how it affects my followers. Um, if they really fuck with me and they really love me and want to follow me, they will, and they'll understand it. I think if I'm honest about my experience. So yeah, it was nerve wracking. But I'll be damned if it wasn't like the best in terms of like forming this new relationship and like, I was saying like the old me is dead and like the person who wrote Soft Boy is dead and that like I'm now this new being. Like that couldn't have happened while I was on social media. Like I
Mm,
had to unplug and really like
that
figure
is
out who I really
scary.
am. It's very scary.
That's scary. It's funny because your time offline, I probably reached out like a year, I think it was March of 2021.
Mhm.
Um, whenever, like right around the time that you published this. And, you know, hearing from you then again maybe like 9 months later, I don't know how much time passed specifically. And you asking like if that would still be of interest to me to have this conversation, I was like, in my head, I was like, duh, absolutely. Like nothing about your um eh, like work or impact or influence like changed when you went offline. Like it's not like, oh no, I don't think Dave's done anything relevant recently, I don't want to talk to him. Like no, like you still have so much to share and to say. And it's cool that you were able to take that break and it not negatively impact your
Yeah,
position as an artist and like in your work from an
I,
outsider perspective.
I appreciate you saying that,
I mean,
because
but it is a big fear. Like, you
yeah,
take yourself out of the equation and then you feel like you're taking yourself out of consideration, out of the race a little bit. Like,
yeah, but that's
scary.
again the myth of social media is that,
How
especially
they
as an
keep you coming back.
yeah, it's
You have
exactly
to
it's
do this to stay
especially
relevant.
now because it's like now everyone's a brand. Everyone's
Yeah,
like, commodifying everything they
it's
can just
weird.
to because you can, and because again in the capitalistic society that we live in, it's like, why wouldn't you? If I
Yeah,
could grow and make money off of being myself and my passions, why would I not choose that over working at Five Guys, which I have, by the way, and my
mhm.
fries were crazy as fuck. Um, but
I used
yeah,
to
it's
work
like
at Sabaro tossing the pizza.
Sabaro. I hate
Yeah,
Sabaro's pizza, yo.
that's
What do
so
you? And
funny.
what's their
Okay,
name?
well, I am, it was
You
one of
better be
those
careful because you're from New York too. Are
things
you?
are,
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that I selected Sabaro aside from if my family was on a road trip and we stopped at a rest stop and needed dinner,
Right.
like we
Right.
would
Right.
probably get pizza.
Yeah.
Um, I also didn't eat from my own supply of Sabaro pizza. So that's my
That
bad.
part.
That's my
No,
bad.
no. But that makes it taste better though, because when I
Yeah,
tell you, I took home a good amount of burgers when I worked at Five Guys. They say you're only allowed to have one, but
that's so funny.
you know how Instagram allows you to like hide how many people like your picture
Yeah.
now? As much as I hate that feature, um, in this direction in which we're going now, I
Mhm.
get it. Because now it's like, oh, you only have two people liking your picture. What a shame. Like you have no
Yeah.
clout. It's like, bro, those are two fucking people who like your picture. Like that's
Yeah.
if you had two niggas in a room staring at your picture, being like, I fuck with this, you'd be over the moon. You'd be excited because
Totally.
you see them and you see them engaging. But there's something about um the dehumanization, I think, that happens when everyone's a brand and not
Yeah.
like a person. And by the way, like when I say brand, I mean like everyone's spotless. Everyone is already put together, and everyone is
Unproblematic.
unproblematic and clean and
Mhm.
flawless. And like that's
And,
not
and
how real,
consistent.
and exactly. And like that's not how real people are. And that's
Yeah.
also damaging to like all these kids who are now like trying to figure out their own thing. And
I know.
they're looking online and all they see is this polished, clean people. And it's like, that's not what I feel like in myself. And so that just contributes more to like the low self-esteem and that whole thing. But there's so many takes about social media online. Like I don't even want to, I know I can't really offer anything new. I just know that
Yeah.
um, I understand why people hide their likes. I understand why people buy likes. I understand why people fake their engagement numbers. But what I realize is that a lot of poets, even the ones that are like cool now and like,
Yeah.
influencers, they were fucking nerds. They were on Tumblr just blogging about random stuff. And I
Hmm.
was never on Tumblr. YouTube was my Tumblr, but like so many poets came from these online blogging communities, and then they somehow built the confidence in their life to like perform some of their writing on stage, and then they found out, oh, people actually like them and now they're cool, because people like them. But don't forget where you came from. Like we are
Right.
all we are all still those nerdy little like geeky ugly,
Oh my God.
crusty little kids, on the internet just trying to like be someone, you know.
Yeah. So what brought you back online?
I just missed my friends, if I'm being honest with you. Like
Mhm.
there was that whole brand concern. Um, but honestly, I just really social media for me is just a way to keep in touch with people. Because to be honest, I hate texting. Um, the only thing I hate more than texting is spontaneous calls. Do not
Really?
call me out of nowhere. I don't care who you are.
That's so funny.
Only my mom and like my siblings can call me out of nowhere. Everyone else needs to like give me at least like 30-minute heads
Is
up.
this an introverted thing, do you think?
Probably.
Because
Yeah.
like I
Yeah.
love a spontaneous call.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely wait, so what are you? Like why do you
I
identify?
think I'm an extrovert. I mean,
Okay. I
my
can see that.
mom, yeah, the way my mom describes it, at least, which I co-sign probably, is like, do you get your energy from being alone or being with other people?
Mm,
And
mm.
I, as far as I've observed of myself, I get more energy when I'm with other people. And I
Yeah,
do like, it's not that I don't like alone time. Like I do like alone time, but it doesn't energize me as much, all
right.
at least majority wise.
Yeah, no, we are
If I'm
complete
like already
opposites.
capping my social bar, then sure, maybe I'll get energy from being alone, but generally it's usually from other people.
Yeah, like no one is exclusively one or the other,
Yeah.
right? Like we
Yeah.
all need alone time and we all need
Right.
community to some
Yeah.
level. But that energy part, I think, is the qualifying factor. Like, where do you
Hmm.
go to recharge?
Right.
And for me, it's absolutely by myself in my room.
So
Uh,
you've had like basically a year of recharging then with
yeah, yeah,
being by
yeah,
yourself.
yeah, in a way.
I mean, is that how it feels?
No, I mean,
No?
it didn't feel like recharging because again, I was going through a breakup. So it was like I
Yeah.
felt like I was dying, I was grieving. Um, but after the grief, I was absolutely recharging. I was like, not having to worry about posting on a specific schedule or content. Oh, I need content. Oh, so annoying, bro. Like, there's so much content in the world, and it's like, and yet we all, as creators, there's like this impulse to just be constantly fucking regurgitating content, and it's absurd, and it's why there's so much bullshit out there. Because I'll take someone who posts every 3 months, but every post is like fire over someone who's
Yeah.
posting like every day and it's like mid
Well, because
to
that's how you
okay.
get you appear more frequently on people's pages. You post every day and then you
The
become more
algorithm.
relevant to the
The
algorithm.
algorithm.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I
Yep.
agree. Like and I know I mentioned this to you yesterday, like, uh, it concerns me some like self help, self care, social media
Mm,
behavior
mm,
that's
mm,
so
mm, mm.
prominent right now. Um, and how vague it is, and
Yeah.
how there's not a ton of context on social media.
Social media literally is built to like not include context.
Yeah.
Like social media is all about little micro doses of content. A tweet is 140 characters. Like you can't tell me you're going to give all the context that any topic really demands with that much space.
Right. Do you remember
Historically,
Formspring?
yeah. Wait, was when like you get to ask questions,
Yeah,
right?
it's anonymous, or like, yeah,
Yeah,
you get
yeah,
to
yeah,
comment on people, like the people asking questions or commenting are anonymous. And
yeah.
yeah,
Formspring had a hold on our generation.
I know it was bad. I
Um,
never had one, but like I remember it was
Me either.
bad.
I didn't have the courage. I didn't want to
Yeah.
be asked
No.
questions that I wasn't ready
No,
to
no,
answer.
no. Yeah. Yeah.
I think I might have asked a question or two though, maybe to a crush or something,
Right.
that I would never again not ask in person because I'm a coward, right? Um,
Yeah.
yeah, Formspring. I mean, I remember MySpace. I wasn't allowed to be on MySpace.
Hmm.
I missed the whole AOL wave. Um,
Mm.
but I was on Skype all the time and Uvu.
Uvu. Yeah, I was just gonna say
Uvu was
that.
that
Yeah.
shit.
We didn't have cable until I was like a little bit older as a child. So I don't know. It's
How
funny
old?
too. Mm. maybe like 8 or 9, but we also like it confuses me how I remember songs that were popular back
Mm,
in the day because
mm.
we only listened to Irish music in the car. Like I mean, that's all I listened to growing up. Like I don't know,
Can you
like
name an Irish bop right now
an
off the
Irish
top of your head?
bop,
A bop, yeah. Like what's like the go-to Irish, you know?
well, I mean, there's like Galway Girl is a classic, but that's not necessarily
Oh, girl.
traditional Irish music.
Okay.
Like I'm talking like traditional because that's what
Like,
my family plays. I'm like, how do I know the lyrics to these songs?
yeah.
Because like I definitely wasn't listening at home,
Hmm.
and I went to Catholic school. Like we weren't like walking around with our like I had a Walkman eventually, but I don't know. Like my exposure was so much more limited um than it feels like it is now, you
Right.
know? I'm
Right.
like, no, I must have seen that stuff. I remember being so upset when Cheetah Girls came out and I didn't have cable and like everyone was talking about it and I was like, how do I see this movie? Like we used
Wow.
to just
Okay.
watch PBS and then my mom says like the first time that I saw a commercial, I thought like the TV was broken, because PBS didn't do commercials. It was confusing.
That's so
So
funny.
yeah.
That's so
But it's kind of
cute.
one of those things where you just when you don't know what you don't know, it
For
doesn't
sure.
feel like
For sure.
that big of a deal. And then
Yeah.
the world just kind of like expands a bit,
Opened
but
up. Yeah.
we still had pretty I wouldn't call it strict because it doesn't feel like it impacted me that much, but we had like caps on how much like TV we were allowed to watch or when we were
Right.
allowed to watch it. Like
Right.
there were rules around it. So
Right. Right.
um I don't think I like went out of my way to try to actually that's not true. Sometimes I did watch MTV when I wasn't supposed to. Um like the Daisy Dukes or like whatever shows, the
Mhm.
next bus and those like old.
Mm, mm. What Irish music was for you was gospel for me.
Mm,
I mean, to this day, there are gospel songs I hear that like take me right back to
mm,
moments. And even though it's very embarrassing to say this, but we're already here.
yeah.
My parents were so strict about cursing that we weren't like allowed to listen to rap.
Yeah.
We actually listened to a lot of Radio Disney and like Kids Bop. I know it's so cringy. It's so cringy, but like, yeah, they were like, which honestly, like, I don't agree. I resent my parents for this, but it's
Uh-huh.
like, we were over listening to the fucking Kids Bop version of One Two Step by Sierra, and it's
Oh my God. Oh my God. That must be
like,
so bad. They
but
really
my
butchered so many
they
songs.
it should be illegal. Like
I know.
those
That's what I'm
kids should
saying.
be in jail for those
Yeah.
pops.
I wonder where they are and if they like try to disassociate like from that part of life.
There's no, yeah, there should be like a some kind of show where it's
Yeah.
like these
What
are the
Kids Bop
kids,
did to my career. I don't know. That's so funny.
kids who bopped. Um,
Do you
yeah,
still feel like does anything gospel related or church related resonate with you still?
absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely.
Like that's
Because
still a part of your life.
I don't listen to it regularly,
Hmm.
um, but I absolutely love when it comes on or someone puts on a song at like a party and there's
Yeah.
other like church kids in the room and we all just collectively start singing these songs that like everyone else is like, what the
You like
hell?
make eye contact and you're like,
Yeah, when we start we start shouting or something, like
yeah.
there is like there is something to that. But ultimately I think gospel as a genre is probably one of the strongest, most consistent genres because ultimately it's about struggle. It's
Mm,
about like if you really listen to gospel music, a lot of it is like things will get better. Just
mm,
keep hoping, keep believing, keep living. You know what I mean? No matter what you're going through. My favorite parts of gospel music is when they get really specific about the struggles.
mhm.
And then like, maybe even some of the homophobia comes out where they be like, God is gonna help you get your brother out of jail, or God's gonna help you pay your bills this month, and God's gonna help your daughter overcome her lesbian attractions. And it's like, all right, those things are not. those things are not, one of those things doesn't belong.
Right,
You
right.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
But again, that's the culture I grew up in, and those are the
Mhm,
songs my mom would listen to. In fact, the first rap song I ever heard my mom listen to was Mace's Welcome Back CD. And that was
mm,
because Mace became a pastor. And then
mm,
he re-entered the rap game, had this very clean image. And Welcome Back is a banger to this day.
yeah,
Like it's certified. But like me, I would like sneak and listen to like Eminem in my closet, like literally listening to cleaning out my closet in the
mhm,
closet and being like, you can say that? Like you're allowed to say these things on
yeah.
in public?
This is why like, this idea that we don't even know what's out there or what's possible,
Mm,
um, until someone sets that example, like, until someone provides the education in this way, for example, or in your book, gives you the vocabulary to
mm.
understand what's
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah.
That's why I think this kind of work is so important. Like, you are giving words and
Yeah.
vocabulary and, like, setting an example of expression for others,
Absolutely.
um,
Absolutely.
which is huge. And just like even on a micro level, like that's how I think about and talk about my job now in a lot of ways, because I just like didn't even know it was an option. When you don't know that things are an
Mm,
option,
mm, mm.
they don't they're not going to organically cross your mind.
For
Someone
sure.
has to like say it or do it or show you,
Yeah.
you know. Um
Absolutely. I
yeah.
honestly think, and not to again bring it back to oppression,
Yeah.
but I think a function of oppression is to control a specific group of people's imagination for what is possible for their own lives. And that applies to women, it applies to
Mhm.
like Black people, especially Black women, it applies to trans folk. It's like, let's keep calling your truth impossible.
Mm.
Let's convince you that you're trying to, by trying to do anything different, you're are you're pushing a boulder up a hill, but like you made it a hill. That's what they don't tell you. Is like they made it a hill and
Right.
they made it a boulder.
It's funny
So
that you bring that up, because actually one of my last questions for you was if you, and this is like a little bit of projection because I've struggled with this in my experience, but are you able to visualize the future that you want?
am I able to visualize the future that I want? Yeah, now more than I could before. Um, because one of my issues with the place I was in when I wrote Soft Boy was that like I had no idea what was possible for myself, and my standards for what love was and what I was willing to receive from others was very low. And like that book, again, I love Soft Boy. I love it so much, and I don't want people to think that like I don't like my own book or anything like that. But I just want to be real about
Mhm.
what the reality of being an author is and putting something into the world and then growing from it
Mm.
and reflecting back on it. Um, Soft Boy, when I wrote it, I was just happy to be here. Like I was just happy to have made a book and to have a platform of people who want to read it and will buy it. So it was very much I was trying to please everyone with it, and I was trying to be palatable and be accepted. And that's because in my own life, that's what I wanted. That's what I was trying to do. I was trying to earn people's acceptance by performing this like really politically correct, like spotless, non-threatening, non-harmful person. Which like no one is, like
Mhm.
it's impossible not to harm people. The most important thing is what comes after that harm, the change and the growth and the accountability, you know what I mean, and the
Mhm.
addressing of victims and people who are victimized. Like that's what matters. And I think now, because I've accepted my own humanity and now my standard for the love I received and the respect that I deserve is so much higher. Now my vision for the possibilities of my life is like so like Oh my goodness. There's things I can't say just because not because I don't feel comfortable saying them, but
Mhm.
because I don't want things to be taken out of context. And I need
Sure.
to, like, again, we've been talking for what, like almost 2 hours,
I
and I
know.
don't want to like overwhelm anyone, but like literally there was a point, I'll say this. There was a point during that social media break year in which, like, I didn't want to live anymore, you know? And when I look back on that time, I can't believe how, like, limited my view was of myself
Mm.
and what I was and my potential. Um, Ultimately, that place came from a place of hurt, and I was in so much pain that I just wanted a release, and I wanted a
Mhm.
reprieve from it. But now I look at my life and I'm like, yo, like, I want to live. I want to live for me. It's not for anyone else no more. It's like
Right.
I wake up in the morning like excited to be working on the things that I'm working on. Like, I'm working on some crazy stuff now. I'm not even gonna tell y'all. Y'all gotta wait because
I'm
it's
really excited to
it's it's
see.
gonna be major. But I couldn't have got to that place without going through the dark place first. And
Right.
so that is probably the biggest thing I could offer anyone listening right now is like, keep going. You know what I mean? Like, you deserve to live and to be loved and to grow and to be held. And growth is not this comfortable process. It's uncomfortable. It is like you have to die to be reborn. And um, you got this, like, it doesn't always feel like that, but the very fact that you're alive and breathing is the product of many miracles. So, I can't wait to see what you do in the future, Fiona. I can't wait to see
Yeah,
what I do in the future.
that was beautiful.
I'm just glad to be here, honestly.
I really appreciate everything that you've shared with us and just being so open and honest. I'm I'm so grateful that we got to do this, and I really,
Same.
really just want to like tell you how much I appreciate your time and your work. Um, this has been so lovely, and I'm so glad we're back in touch. Like,
Likewise, same. And let's keep in touch. And we can cut this part out maybe, but like, do you think people want to hear this shit? Like, do you think this was
oh
a
yeah, for
engaging
sure.
conversation? Okay, cool.
Absolutely. I mean, I
But
hope that you do too, but
yeah.
um
Well, I don't have like a good, again, I think it might be a product of the social
yeah.
ineptitude, but like, I don't understand what people like. I just kind of like do what I think is interesting and then hope that someone else finds it interesting too. But like, I
I
don't
think
know.
just I mean, it's hard for me to say wholeheartedly that I know I'm making stuff that everyone loves, you know? I
Right,
can't
right.
it's that would be impossible and that would be too tall of an order for me to fulfill anyway. But I love listening to meaningful conversation and to hearing how people, you know, what they go through to get to where they are. I
Yeah.
think that's invaluable and that's what I try to share.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
for people interested in that, I think that they would love this.
Word. Well,
Yeah.
thank you for having me in this space. If you're listening, thank you for
Yes,
listening.
thank you so much.
You're
Where can
beautiful.
people, since you are back
Yes.
online, where can people find you?
Yeah. Yeah. I am Dave G Poetry on Twitter and on Instagram. Um, I Facebook.com/slash Dave G Poetry will take you to my Facebook fan page. I think also Dave G Poetry on YouTube, and I'm going to be uploading more YouTube content. Um, and yeah, if you're interested in purchasing my book or hearing more of my
Yes.
work, you can go to www.davegpoetry.com. It's all there. If you want to book me for anything or just want to reach
Yeah.
out, say hi. I'm a personable person. I like having conversations like this one. So yeah, I would love to just be in community with you all. And thank you so much
Awesome.
again, Fiona, for having me on your
Of
podcast.
course.
Super fun.
Of
Uh,
course. Thank you all
and
again
yeah,
for listening. This has been Fiona Winch and David Gaines.
Yeah. Have a good one, y'all.